All right. Well, let's jump in to our webinar. So we are going to do our Watch Me Work series here. And today we're going to walk through creating a new budget cycle. So a couple housekeeping things. Use Zoom's chat feature to interact with us. We're really looking forward to making this interactive. Ask your questions, any comments you have about things you've done before that work well for you, anything like that that you want to add to the conversation. We highly encourage you to do that. And then also feel free to use the Q&A option as well. That's going to allow us to follow up with you after the fact. So any sort of software questions are great to put in there. But all that being said, we really want you to interact and make this time your own. We want to be able to answer the questions that make sense for you and ensure that we are following along with whatever's going on in your world. So I do want to mention that we have support for closed captioning turned on, so feel free to utilize that if you need that. We do have a diverse group of Martus users on our call, so people will be at different subscription levels and be using different accounting systems. So for the most part, when we get into one of those areas where maybe not everybody would have the ability to do something, we will mention it. In this training, we're pretty much all in the same foot, so to speak. And then we will send out the video and PowerPoint for this probably tomorrow or Thursday and get that out to everybody who registered. All right, so let's walk through where we are headed. So we're going to walk through the planner setup area. That's where we're going to go to create our budget and manage the budget. We're going to create a few different types of budgets as we begin. We're going to review our special purpose worksheets and then post our budget out to our accounting software. All
Melissa,
right.
I'm curious, for those that are on the call with us, when does everybody's budget season start? Are we coming up on that for some of y'all? So is this a timely webinar for you? Let us know in the chat if you want to let us know when your budget season starts for us. We're curious.
Yeah, that's a great question. All right. So while we wait for everybody, we are going to jump in to our planner section and our planner setup. And yeah, we've got a couple different answers in our chat here. So that's exciting.
Yep, very timely for
right.
some. Perfect.
Yes. All right. So here is our 2022 budget. We are going to pretend that we are squarely in the year 2022. We're going to do some time traveling. Probably not the year I would choose to go back to, but so it's an okay year. And we have our master budget here. So the very first thing that I'm going to want to do when I come into planner setup and I'm getting ready to budget for my next fiscal year, we can come over here to our set budget year. Now, when we are going to change this to 2023, and Joseph, as you said earlier, does this change anything in my dashboard section?
It does not, no.
Yeah,
So,
so go ahead, Joseph, sorry.
I was just going to say there's quite a few comments that we get sometimes about not wanting to set that just yet because they're afraid of the reports changing. But this has no effect on the dashboard reports. This is just the default for our planner section where we build a budget.
Yep. So for those of you who are wondering, well, what does control my dashboard financials and the date that my users are going to see here, this is going to be controlled solely by your last closed month, which you can update in the setup calendar. So the planner defaults, including the budgeting year, only affect the pages here within our planner section. So that makes it really easy for us to manage and jump into the budget that we're going to start working on in the next year's budget. All right.
So we completed our first poll, Melissa.
Oh, awesome.
I asked them how they start their budget, and 50% start with framework only, and the other 50% start with budget to actuals.
Oh, awesome. Well, that's quite the divisive group we've got here. So that'll be fun. We're going to talk through how to start both ways, and we are going to look at that now. So we have here in our planner setup, we've changed our budget year to 2023. We have the training budget that we created probably during implementation that maybe we were playing with, but this isn't really where we want to start with our budget year. We're going to create a new budget. Now, one of the exciting things is that we actually have updated this page and this button to make life so much simpler, especially for those 50% of you who are doing things and are creating it based on last year's budget to actual. So let's go ahead and click on the create budget button, and we are going to just talk through. You'll notice that we now have lots of options in here. We're going to talk through each one. We're going to first mention the empty budget. Do realize that that is empty. There are no framework budget worksheets. It's literally an empty shell with no worksheets in it whatsoever. So do be aware that that's not something you're normally using. Every once in a while, it can be really helpful, but not something we normally need to utilize. Then one of our most common, and this is what the option was before, is that we have our option to base this on prior year's budget. So you can see we still have the option to choose our source budget and give it a name. I'm going to go ahead and call this framework only. I'm going to name my budgets today according to the type of budget I'm creating. You would want to name your budget to whatever makes sense for your organization as far as, initial budget, working budget, anything like that. So I'm going to call it framework only, and I'm going to choose our framework only option. So when we copy our framework only budget, we are just getting our worksheets. We're not going to get those worksheet lines that we would get with the budget values option. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create budget here and hit OK. And then I'm going to click on this view task progress. And because you guys are here, you guys are going to find out that coming up this weekend or the next weekend, we are going to have here, we are going to update how the updater task queue works. So by default, it will have everything completed. And we're also going to reverse the sort order. So when you come in trying to see which job you had just kicked off and want to see if it's completed, it will be at the top. Currently, you do need to scroll down and see that our master budget was copied for our framework only. So let's go ahead and jump over to our planner worksheets and just see what that looks like. So I'm going to come in here. Notice that because we changed our year to 2023, we are defaulting to 2023. I am also defaulting still to my training budget. We'll talk about how to fix that in a bit. But we're going to manually come into our framework only budget, is I just want to show you what it looks like when you do this. So when I copy this, you will see that our budget worksheet is unlocked, but there is no budget yet for this data. So I can click on show reference data and see all of my 22 actuals and budget. So that would be my last year's actuals and budget. I could also see, for example, my 12-month trailing actuals. And then as needed, I can click on load. When I click on load, I feel like this is one of the most mysterious buttons in Martus. Whenever I click on load, Martus is going to look and add any lines that are missing from my budget that are included in the current reference data. So right now, all of the lines are missing. So if we click on load, we can have all of those lines added. And now we're ready to actually start the budgeting process.
So Melissa, just an observation on this. I think this is a great approach. This framework only option is a great approach for those that do zero-based budgeting, where they don't want any amounts pre-populated there, right? They want the users to really think about how they're going to budget for each line. And of course, as you just showed, they can pre-populate at least the lines there with no amounts by clicking load if the worksheet is blank like that from the framework.
Yep, exactly. So you'll be able to come in and see your budget amounts as well as your actuals for that previous year and see all of that data and be able to make those decisions on a line by line basis. All right, so we're going to jump back to planner setup and we're going to create yet another budget just because we are learning on this call. Normally you just need to create the one budget. So don't get into Martus and think, oh my goodness, I need to create 4 different budgets. You don't have to. We're just playing with all of the options we have. So we're going to base this on the prior year's budget as well. And we're going to choose our budget and we're just going to copy all of our budget values. One of my favorite things about the update to this modal and this little pop-up here is that with the update, you don't really have to worry about this as much. That was really an option from before where you had to copy the budget in the previous year and load actuals and then make sure Martus was doing what you expected. If you have questions about when or where to use that option, definitely reach out to us. But for the most part, for those of you who are creating your budget based on prior year's actual and budget, You can now do that right here, and you don't have to worry about all of those extra steps we were doing before. But let's create one based on prior year's budget, and we'll copy all of those budget values and create that budget. I'm not going to go over and look at that because I'm getting too excited about using our based on prior year's actuals and budget. So
So
this option,
yeah, I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, so when we actually talk about submit your ideas through a support ticket or let us know, some things that we could do better in Martus. This is one of those. So pay attention here because I think this is a really cool feature that knocks out several steps that we used to do before. And now it's one step here. So yeah, this is
Yes, I think when I updated the knowledge base article on this from the previous way to this way, I took out like 12 to 15 actual steps. So it went from a process of like 20 to like 5. It was
yep.
pretty awesome. So with this option, for those of you who are creating a budget based on last year's budget and actuals, you want to come in and just click on create budget here. Base that on your prior year's actuals and budget. You can choose the budget and then you can give it a name. And then you can see here our limit to worksheets existing in source budget. Now, that's probably one of the other questions. I think that is another one of the options in Martus that has a little bit of mystery around it. So let me just take that mystery out and give you a peek behind the curtain of what that is saying. And so what that's saying here is I'm going to a different tab here. In our dashboard financials, when we are looking specifically at our worksheet budget comparison report, you can see that we have existing worksheets for some of the sheet dimension combinations. So we have general and counseling. Check, we have that one. Down here, we have spent $5,500 in the Colson Initiative Youth Center, but we didn't have a budget for our 2022 master budget for that combination of sheet dimensions. And so what this question is it's saying, do you want me to limit to just the worksheets that you have a green check marks for? Or do you want Martus to create for you these 4 missing worksheets in the worksheet management tab? And then it would also load those actuals into those worksheets as well. And so a lot of times people are like, well, what if I want 3 out of the 4? If you want 3 out of the 4, I do recommend going ahead and unselecting that so you get them all. And then you can easily delete the worksheets that you don't need. A lot of times that's less steps than creating the worksheets that you do need. So we're going to go ahead and unselect it and we will click on create budget. Now I'm just going to go dashboard updater again really quick and make sure that everything has finished copying here. Oh, and it hasn't. See, it's still working here. Now, while that's working, where's the other place, Joseph, I can go to check on my statuses?
The worksheet statuses?
Or no, the job completion statuses.
Oh boy, you've got me on that one.
You can go to your welcome screen.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you. I don't spend a lot of time there, so thank you for reminding me.
No,
Yeah.
so sometimes I like going here because I can see which jobs I have kicked off versus other users. It's really easy. And up until like this weekend when we changed the behavior of the updater screen, this one does show your most recent on the top and shows you everything. The drawback of this page is that it doesn't automatically refresh, so you do need to hit the welcome over and over until your job is successful. All right, so now we have a plethora of budgets, and we are going to come back to planner setup and just kind of talk through how to manage the overall budget. So we are going to come in and notice that all of our budgets are here. We have our framework only, we have our based on prior year's budget, and our actuals option. Notice that currently our training budget is set as both the dashboard default and the planner default. I'm going to go ahead and select our prior year's budget and actuals and set that as my planner. What that means is that's going to be the default budget I'm using in my planner section. And because we've set 2023 as our default year, we're going to see this budget by default when we're navigating on the different pages here. Now, one of the things that we get asked about a lot is, don't I want to also set this as my dashboard budget? And the answer to that is a little bit twofold. It's yes, but not right now. And the reason is because once you set a budget to your dashboard budget, you will not be able to load your personnel data. So you won't be able to push your scenario from personnel into that budget because we are kind of assuming that once a budget is your dashboard budget, that's pretty locked in and you wouldn't want to be accidentally making changes from personnel. So you do want to be aware that just leave it as your planner default to begin with. And then once you're ready and you go in to lock all of your worksheets, that's when you'll go in and then set that budget as your dashboard default. Now, there are a few different other actions I can take with this selection and the action menu. One of those is that I can set a budget as viewable. And I do want to spend a minute and talk about this because it's important to realize that this is only needed for budgets that are not your dashboard budget or planner budget. And we only need to set budgets that are viewable or budgets that maybe a few people need to see but aren't our planner and dashboard default. So all of your non-admin users will be able to see the planner default and dashboard default budget by default. That's why they're the defaults. Sometimes you have a third budget or a fourth budget that maybe you want to be able to see, you want people to be able to see or compare. Maybe we've been working with one of our customers who has like 5 or 6 versions of their budget. And so they may want their users to be able to kind of compare budget over budget as they're working through their budget revisions. And so that's when we would use our not admins can view. Otherwise, we don't have to worry about it. The other thing we can do here is set our default reference data so we can change what that default is. This is probably most important for those of you who are using a framework budget, because if somebody just goes into their worksheet and clicks load, they're going to load the lines that are in either their actuals and budget actuals or like their 12-month trailing actuals. So depending on what lines you want them to load by default, that's very important. All right, Joseph, what's the other thing we need to do before we let our users in to budget?
Well, I'd probably make sure the budget is unlocked.
Yes. So because we copied our master budget from 2022, our worksheets are locked, and we can see that by coming over to our worksheet management. And you can see that I probably was getting dinged some points in Martus because my previous budget was not fully locked, but we'll go ahead and fix that now, at least in this budget, and unlock all of our worksheets. Now we're ready to come over and go to our worksheet management. So this is probably the tab it's a very important tab in Martus, and people forget where it is all the time. So don't forget where it is, or if you do, remember that it does exist and ask us where it is. We're happy to help you out with support for that. But this worksheet management tab, this is where you're going to be able to add a new worksheet to your budget. This is also where you can go to remove those worksheets that you don't need. So this is something that is inactive. We had spent some money in there last year, so we created it, but we don't actually want it in our budget moving forward. So I'm just going to select it and delete it. Now we do want to be careful with that because there is not an undo when you just delete a worksheet like that. So it is wise that before you make any sort of major changes here on your worksheet management, especially deleting, that you utilize our archive budget option. So you can come in any point and select a budget and click on archive and make an archive.
Well, so I'm curious, how often should users create an archive of a budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it depends on how active you are in your budget cycle. So I always do it personally. Like whenever I'm walking through things with a client, we're about to go delete worksheets, or we're going to load our personnel scenario and post that into our budget, or we're about to import file into an existing budget, I will always recommend that we come in here and archive the budget. Because when we do that, we can simply come over to our archive budgets here and we can restore that. If we don't have the budget archived and you have to ask us to do that, there's normally a charge around that. And so we do want to help out ourselves, and it's also a lot faster to restore from here rather than waiting for our team to go onto the server and get the backup and all of those things. So that archived budget, if you have people working in the budget like all day, like this week is something. I have some customers who are archiving that budget every morning and or afternoon. If it's something where people are working, every few days, maybe once a day or every few days, but then definitely before you do any major changes to your budget. So, and the nice thing is if you do have an archive, if somebody says to you, hey, I just really messed up my budget worksheet, it is possible to just go grab those lines from an archive for that one worksheet and restore just that. So if you do run into that and you have the archive, but you only need to restore a little bit of it, just send us an email at support and we are happy to walk you through that. So it makes it really easy. And the reason I like the archives is that while you can copy your budget, for sure, when you do that, you start adding budgets to this list here and it starts kind of getting out of control on you. So I always say if we want a budget that we are going to be actually working in, we want our end users to see it and make changes, then we want to make a copy. But if we're just having like a safety net, then that archive function is great. All right. So hopping back to worksheet management, there's a couple things over here that we want to change, right, Joseph?
Yeah, so I see a couple things. Sometimes the gain loss targets, I know we don't have one there, but sometimes those will copy forward. Well, they will copy forward if they were there, and you might want to update
Yes.
those. And then, of course,
And
bonus and approvers too, probably.
yeah, so let's do our worksheet targets first. We have two options. We can change by a percentage, so we can set them to 105%. And sometimes that's helpful just to get a ballpark of what they are. So I'm going to go ahead and hit set target.
So you chose your master budget from the prior year, it looks like. So it'll take,
Yes.
yeah.
All right. And then we can also choose to set our targets manually. So sometimes this is really, hang on, we don't want to hit that. We want to click on the manually button. So sometimes this is really helpful. I know that there are some organizations out there who, they kind of take a look at last year's actuals and what was budgeted and what was actually spent, and they will go kind of worksheet by worksheet and determine a new gain loss target. Remember that those targets are really just targets. They're not going to prevent somebody from submitting a worksheet, whether they're over or under, but they are really helpful. And you'll be able to see on our worksheets page how close any one worksheet is to their target. And so they can be updated manually here as needed. So let's maybe just make this an even 7,120. And we'll click on set target. All right, Joseph, what actually gives somebody access to view a worksheet?
Well, my first inclination would be to say they've got to be the owner, but I know that has to be more than that. So their user permissions, because I know many of us, we've run into that error, including myself. So they've got to have the permissions on their user setup to those dimension values.
Yeah, so when we come over, exactly. So it's so easy to think, oh, if Michelle can see this or she's the approver, no one else can because her name is here. And that's not true. Now, if her name is here, Martus has become smarter than last year if you were doing this to ensure that if her name is here, she does have access to that worksheet. But you can see here on our users, if I go into Kenneth here, and edit his record and come over to dimensions, and I'm going to load the departments he can see. We can see he is limited to just youth center. So if I come back over here and I click on I've got youth center, food service, and outreach selected. So I'm going to click on update owners and approvers and then assign users. And I'm going to try to assign Kenneth to all of these, and we'll assign Sabrina to the approvers. Fun fact, those are my siblings' first names, not their last, and we'll hit update. We're going to get some messages here. So notice that it made one owner assignment and it made 3 approver assignments. And then it's telling me what my issue is. And it is that Kenneth doesn't have access to the Department of Food Service or Outreach. You can see those right here on the screen. If I hit OK, Martus is actually going to go into Kenneth's user record and give him access to food service and outreach. Oh, how funny. When I left the page, I lost my modal. Or if I hit cancel or leave the tab, Martus will not do that. And you'll notice that we just have Kenneth on our youth center worksheet. We do not have him on our other 2 worksheets. Now, if you do hit OK on that message and you do update their permissions, sometimes that can be really helpful. You've added a new department or subdepartment or something like that, and you do want to give somebody access to that, making them, updating it. Because you're updating somebody's setup permissions user account from somewhere other than setup users, we will send you an email just to ensure that what you meant to do was what you meant to do and you weren't accidentally doing something that you hadn't intended to do. All right, Joseph. Well, I think we're ready to go do some budgeting. What do you think?
Let's hit it. I saw one of our recent polls here that Amanda did for us about some special purpose worksheets. So maybe we could
Yeah.
take a look and do some budgeting and talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah,
Yes.
71% of people said, what is a special purpose worksheet? Well, 29% said we have a few, and 0% said that they were experts.
All right. Well, that's exciting. We got some room to learn here. So that's fun. All right. So we are going to come in because I set our budget for last year's budget and actuals as my planner. We're going to come into our outreach department and you will notice that we have all of our data here to update. We can show the reference data if we want to. I'm going to keep that hidden for now. And I'm just going to come down and look at our program supplies line. So whenever we're thinking about our budget, this is the budget that we are actually updating. So this is what's in the budget. This is what Martus is calculating for our 5305 program supplies with our non-project grant related project for Corporation 100 and Department 130. So we are planning on spending $2,993.49 in June. Now I can see all of my reference data here. So for my previous year's data, we do have our through May, we have our budget and actuals. So because we copied our budget and actuals, this line is an exact match to what we have in our budget. But you can see we have actuals further out than that because remember, this is a kind of a funky demo system with some time traveling happening. And then you can see that our budget here is similar, but still different than our actuals. But we pulled into our actual budget line moving forward, our budget to actuals line. Now your budget users can use the budget widget to update those lines. And we will talk more about that on our fourth Watch Me Work session. But one of the things I want to show you here is our special purpose worksheets. So, Joseph, I'm going to ask you the question this time. What makes a special purpose worksheet special?
Why is this special? Yeah, good question. So SPW for short, right? Special purpose worksheet. I would say a couple things. Number one, you might want to itemize certain budget lines. So think of software subscriptions. You've got Microsoft Office, you've got Adobe, you've got Martus, you've got accounting software, right? You might want to just itemize all those and see them one by one, but roll them up. Or, and I guess to your example here, you might have contractors that might be listed out separately as well and have them all hit the same account. So I'd say one thing that's special is itemizing budget lines. And the second thing, you could also create other calculations and formulas in these for some driver-based planning.
Yeah. So you can get really, really technical really quick. And if you're at the advanced or standard plus, advanced plus or standard plus or enterprise level, you can actually use reporting groups to pull in some of those pieces of data. So I've been working with a customer who we pulled in one of their statistical accounts and are figuring out a cost per day average based on some statistical accounting. And so we are doing all sorts of crazy things in this special purpose worksheet. But one of the things that I encourage, us all do is that we often have lines like Joseph was talking about. I know back in the early 2000s when I was budgeting for our big day camp, I had a large budget and 3 budget lines. I had transportation, salaries, and program expenses. In my program expenses were all sorts of crazy things that you would buy for a day camp, like tickets to amusement parks and bounce houses and cotton candy rentals and PlayStations and PlayStation games and craft supplies and rec supplies. And so I was often trying to figure out like how much of that money I was going to spend and how I had planned it. So I had to keep all of that in Excel. With special purpose worksheets, we can, like Joseph said, we can put that all here. So I'm going to actually come in here and we're going to update. And so each line here we can post out to our worksheet. So here you can see we're going to post this money to our consulting fees with our non-project grant. And then I'm going to fix this other one so that it's also posting to our grant. And we could add additional lines. So we could add additional lines to our consulting fee with no grant, or we could add a line for a whole nother section or not, such as, let's say, software. And this can be our email software. And we'll post this to our budget worksheet. let's see, where do we want to put that? We'll put that in
Software subscriptions.
subscription.
Perfect.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And we'll set that to our project grant. And then we'll come over to our values and we can just say we're going to do $100 a month and we can hit save on that. And now when I come in and as I copy my budget from year to year, these special purpose worksheets will flow through into those copies. And so while it may take a little while to get some of this stuff into a special purpose worksheet, it is super helpful once you're there. So we do have a Watch Me Work from back in March when we did our previous one, all on special purpose worksheets. I definitely encourage you to check that one out and learn more. And then if you want to dive deeper, let our support team know. We would love to, help you out with utilizing this option because there are a lot of really helpful things that you can do, including things like make templates and allow your users to pull those lines into their special purpose worksheets. We have a lot of customers who do that for like travel things where they're setting a travel cost and things like that. If we have time at the end, we will come back and we can play a little bit more with our special purpose worksheets. Now, in Martus, a good rule of thumb is that until you click a button, things don't update. And what I mean by that is we have our two lines here. We have our $100 line and our $1,500 line that are calculating. So you can see the $1,500 is a combination of the IT and marketing. And then we have our software subscriptions. Nothing in our worksheet has actually been updated as a result of this so far. And we do that on purpose so that as people are working in their special purpose worksheet, things aren't just arbitrarily changing around the system. So essentially we wait for you to finish that process, then you post into your budget. So to get these numbers to be reflected in my worksheet, I'm going to click on the Post to Worksheet button. And then an easy way to get back to my worksheet and see those changes is to click on this Worksheet button. And so now we can see we have two lines that are being controlled by our special purpose worksheet, which means that I can't edit them directly like I can my other lines because they're controlled by that special purpose worksheet. So I would need to either click on the icon here to jump over to that or go to my worksheet actions and click on the edit special purpose worksheet to make changes to that. All right. So once I'm done with my worksheet here and I'm ready to submit it, one of the things you do want to make sure your users know about, and we do talk about it on our end user basics, is how to actually submit and lock their worksheet. So we recently introduced this option here to submit and lock, and we can set that by clicking this or clicking on submit and lock. So either way works, and that locks the worksheet, meaning I can't make changes. But if I jump over to my approvals tab, you can see it's now awaiting Sabrina's approval. The other thing we can do with our worksheet, probably should have done before we submitted it, is we can add various attachments to our worksheet. So if we do have some sort of supporting documentation, maybe we're planning on buying something more like a capital expense, and we want, estimates, things like that provided. That's where you would use that browse option there and add those attachments. All right. If I come back to my worksheets, I can see exactly what's kind of going on with my worksheet. I can see which ones are waiting for approval, and I can start reporting on them appropriately. Now, before we go and walk through how to push this over to some of our various accounting systems, I do want to go back to planner setup and just create a reforecasted budget, because we just talked about the difference between a locked worksheet and an unlocked worksheet. But I also want to show you what it looks like to have a frozen worksheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and see my budget here. I'm going to click on Create Budget, and I'm going to utilize my new based on current year's actuals and budget. Again, this is saving me a lot of steps of copying the budget and then loading actuals. So I'm going to click on Master Budget, and I'm going to limit my worksheets to the existing worksheets in the budget, and we're just going to call this our forecasted budget, and click on Create Budget. I don't think I actually clicked on it. There we go. And we will click Close and jump back up to our welcome screen and wait for that to complete. And so you can see it's still thinking. It doesn't have a status yet. And there is our status that it is completed. So now I'm going to jump over to my worksheet. So keep with me. We're going to go look at that worksheet. But Remember that our default, we set it to 2023. So we do want to change this here. Actually, I want to also set it as my planner setup. So never mind. We're going to jump back over to planner setup. And we are going to go to 2022 and click on load. And then we're going to jump in and select our forecast. Notice that it's set as frozen. So Joseph, why is it set as frozen?
Well, it has to do with those actuals that were loaded into it. So when you load actuals, one of the things you want to keep in mind is the last closed month that's set in Martus. Maybe that needs to be updated before you actually do that. And so basically what's going to happen in this instance, notice that she's on a calendar year. You see the top left, it says January. So it's going to load the actuals into this new version of a budget or forecast from the beginning of the fiscal or calendar year through that last closed month. So in this case, it started with January and loaded through, help me out, Melissa, I'm not sure what your last closed month was.
I think it was May, but we can
May,
easily
okay.
see by clicking on create budget
Yep.
and looking at this, because it will now tell you
There we
right
go.
here what
Yep.
your last closed month was.
Perfect. Yeah. So sometimes you might want to update that last closed month first, but otherwise it's frozen those months for which actuals were loaded for those first 5.
Yeah, exactly. So what does that actually look like in our budget worksheet? So I'm going to come in. I actually was going to set this as planner. That's what I was doing. And now if I come back to my worksheets, I will still want to go and change my year back to 2022 and hit load. So here is our forecast, and I'm going to go into our outreach budget. And when I click on a line, that's one of the easiest ways. You'll see it's frozen here. But when I click on a line, it makes it very clear what we mean by frozen. So the worksheet is unlocked, meaning I can make changes to the worksheet, but the budget through January through May are frozen. And that's because those are our actual numbers. And when we're asking our budget owners, hey, we're getting towards the end of the year, the middle of the year, we want you to go in and see, if your expected spending is on track, if you're going to spend more or less. And we want you to take into account when you're looking at a budget line, what is true about the months that have already happened. So of course, we don't want somebody to just be able to come in and say, well, I didn't spend $9,000. I'm going to say that, I only spent 8,000. Well, this is the number that we have on the books. And so if you want to change that, you should probably go talk to the accounting team and not be able to just randomly adjust it in your budget line here. So Martus never actually updates your actuals in your accounting system. But in this case, we've pulled those actuals into our budget, and we do want them to remain static so that people can plan accordingly with what's left in the year. So that's the difference between a frozen and an unfrozen worksheet. If I click on the calculator widget here, you can see that those are also frozen within our budget widget as well. Joseph, do you know what happens if I unfreeze the worksheet and I leave?
All right, let me think about this. If you unfreeze the worksheet, so let me ask you a question first. Can anybody unfreeze a worksheet?
No, only admins can
Okay,
unfreeze worksheets.
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you unfreeze the worksheet, back to your question, and you leave, is that what the question was?
Yep.
Yep. So yeah.
So I
So
jump back over here to worksheets,
Mhm.
and then I go back in. Is my worksheet going to be frozen or unfrozen? That is a question.
Oh, that's the $1,000,000 question.
Like Schrodinger's cat.
Man, I haven't tested that in a long time, so I'm curious to see what this does.
So it will actually refreeze it for you. So unlike, well, it was supposed to. That's what the knowledge base says. Well, that's fun. Apparently it doesn't. Did I lock it instead of freeze it? Oh goodness. Oh, we're in 2023. That's why. Hang on. Let's go back to 2022, guys. This is why setting that default fiscal year is so important, because as you're trying to work on different things, it makes it so much easier to make sure that you are in the budget you're expecting. Another helpful tip is that if you are working in a non-default budget for whatever reason, and you're trying to look at the different worksheets, if you hold down Control or the Apple key, Command key, if you're on a Mac, and click, Martus will open that in a new tab. And then when you go back to your worksheets page, it's still filtered the way you're expecting, unlike I just did and completely confused everybody. So this is the worksheet that was frozen that I unfroze, and you can see that Martus refroze it. So
Perfect.
while you're an admin and you can unfreeze it, it's really easy to leave and it will refreeze. We do have some very complex newish commands that sometimes make that worth it. It's not a normal action, but we do try to make it a little bit more less likely that you're going to forget to refreeze because it will freeze for you. All right. So we're done with our budgeting process and we are ready to export our budget and get it into our accounting system. So there are two basic branches to this process. One, if your instance is a file-based instance, meaning you are importing your transactions via a file from your dashboard updater, then your best bet, depending on your accounting system and how you need to get that budget back into your accounting system, is to come to budget management and select your budget and click export. That's going to give you your cleanest way to get that data out of Martus and in a format that can probably be manipulated into the format you need. And we do have some instructions out there for certain file formats. For our API integrations, meaning, Martus is doing the work of pushing and pulling that data. We don't push back anything to your accounting system until you tell us to. And really right now, Intact is the only instance that we actually have the ability, because Intact allows us to. A lot of our other integrations don't allow us to push the budget back into the system. But if you are an Intact customer, you have the ability to come into Intact and make sure you're on the correct fiscal year, choose the Martus budget that you are working on and the budget within Intact that you want to push the budget to. You don't want to click on this button and then you want to click on Upload 2023 Budget. That's going to overwrite everything in that 2023 fiscal year in your Intact budget with whatever's in Martus. And one of our frequently asked questions here, Joseph, is, and I'll ask you, what happens if I need to update it? Can I
Well, I
repush
would
it?
I would resync it actually. So I always point out the red text right there. So if we make an update to the budget, we need to resync it. Easy enough. Just select the budget and hit upload budget again. So it will replace the budget that's in Intact in this case with whatever's coming from Martus for that year that we've selected.
Yep. And then this is another job that will sync over to our queue. And so you do want to make sure that you either wait for that email or go to the welcome screen or the updater screen to make sure that that job finishes as expected. And I will tell you, for those of you who are Intact clients, if you get an error message, that message is actually coming from Intact and it's often hard to decipher. And so feel free to forward that on to support so that we can help you with that deciphering. We've had enough practice now that we've gotten pretty good at it. So feel free to ask us to help if you do get an error pushing your budget over to Intact.
Melissa, I've got a question for you. So
Yeah.
we have clients that don't use Intact, and of course they may, depending upon the accounting software, they may have an export button on the left menu there, or they might just have to export it to Excel. And I've got a kind of a follow-up question for you on that. So I know we just have a few minutes left here. Yes, from here, this is where you could select a budget and export to Excel, right? Here's my question for you. We get it every now and then. So we've talked about how we can do a empty budget or a framework budget, or we can copy forward a prior year budget or actuals. I'm curious on the framework. I want to have all the worksheets with all the lines, but I want all those lines to be zero, of course, zero-based budgeting, but I don't want to have to go into each worksheet and have to click load. I've got a lot of worksheets. What can I do for that?
So your best option there is to create a budget based on either your prior year's budget or your prior year's budget and actuals. That's going to control how many lines you have. So whether you're just getting your budget lines or you're getting your budget and actual lines, I normally recommend the second so that if somebody has spent money somewhere, they will see that budget line. But then we've definitely asked our dev team for a way to do this within Martus. But for now, the best way to do this is to create the budget like you would normally, and then click on export. And that's going to export to your system. And I'm going to open that up for us here. All right. So in this file, what we would do is we would just zero out all of our lines that we don't need. And so I'm just going to copy down my zeros all the way through my budget. I'm going to hit save. Now I can either import this as a brand new budget. If I'm doing that, I probably want to keep all of these tabs. But if I'm just going to kind of overwrite my existing budget, I might, which we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and delete those tabs. We actually just need that budget tab in this case. And I'm going to hit save on my file here. And then we'll go ahead and pull this into our prior year's budget. So to do that, we're going to come over to import, and we'll import into an existing budget, and I'll choose my file and import that. Then I can go back up to my welcome screen, make sure that finishes its job. There we go. It's done. And then let's just go take a look at what that looks like. So from my worksheets here, I am going to change my budget, and you'll notice that my gain loss is empty for all of those columns. But then when I go into my outreach, rather than having no lines, I do have all of my lines. The other nice thing about this is that it does preserve your special purpose worksheets if you need those. So you can also pull your special purpose worksheets in from your framework budget, but in this way, it actually just keeps those in with the budget and they're already there. All right, Joseph.
That's
That
what I
was a
was
good
looking for.
question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Anything else, everybody? We greatly appreciate you joining us today. I'll wait a few minutes for questions. And in the meantime, let's look at what's coming up as we continue through our Watch Me Work sessions here for the month of June. So next week, you can join us. We would love for you to join us for walking through setting up a new personnel scenario for your next fiscal year. Then we have our fun with reporting groups. So that is an advanced plus, standard plus, or enterprise level feature. But we can use reporting groups to do great things with special purpose worksheets and a report builder software or module rather. So we're going to be doing that on June 18th or 19th if you are in the Australia region. And then the 25th and 26th, we're going to talk through our Martus basics for end users. So for that session, we encourage you to invite your non-admin users who are maybe your budget managers who are going in and going to push the buttons to update their budget worksheets. In that session, we cover how to update their budget worksheets, very basic special purpose worksheet instructions, and then all of the reporting. So reporting on our budgets and reporting on our budget to actuals. So we keep it at a very high level as far as we don't dig too deep into the weeds. We keep it at a very user-friendly level so that they can learn and grow as well in their Martus knowledge. So Joseph, anything to add that you want to mention?
I would just highlight the note that I think Amanda put in here for us. So on the referral, right? Refer a friend, you get rewarded and they get rewarded as well. And so definitely check that out as one of the new releases here that we've partnered with the company to help us with that. So we're looking forward to seeing that come to fruition as well.
Yes. So, and definitely look out for a lot of our customer service managers will be reaching out to you as well. Amanda, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I put one other note in here because I've seen a lot of people have an upcoming budget, an upcoming fiscal year change, and just want to mention that you get a free budget refresher once a year with Martus. So you can reach out to support at Martus Solutions to get that set up. And that's really just a time for you to sit with your CSM and talk about how you're going to set up your budget. So if you're unsure of which way, do I need a framework? Do I need budget plus actuals? I'm not really sure about that, which thing I need to do. That's a really great way to figure that out.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, we love doing those budget refreshers. We do it every day. We push those buttons, multiple times a day, and you usually do it once or twice a year. So lean on us for that. We're happy to help. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it's late for some of you and early for others. So I hope that you have a good end of your day or beginning of your day. And we will talk to you. Hopefully, we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Melissa.